So, LEMP is a Lisp-style macro preprocessor that transforms your code at compile time. Right now, it only works in one popular language, C#, but in principle, it could operate on any programming language if someone wrote the necessary adapter code. Here's a demo of an older feature. I've defined two macros that make code a little easier to write. The changeTemporarily macro saves the current value of a variable, changes the value, and then changes it back at the end of the current block, while the ifNN macro simply means if not null. Below you can see how the macros are used, and on the right you see the code that is generated. Now it's always been possible to use arbitrary compile time logic in macros, but it wasn't nearly this easy before. At the beginning of December, I implemented a new macro that lets you use the full power of C# in your macros. Here's an example of complicated compile time logic in a macro. And it's being used down below. I needed to add some new features to LEMP in order to make this as powerful as I wanted. And I actually went down a rabbit hole implementing a bunch of classes like collection with change events that I didn't end up using. But the important thing is that previously it was impossible for a macro to match certain kinds of nodes, such as literals. So I added new matching modes, such as match every literal and match every call, which allow macros to be called on nodes that couldn't be matched before. I also added new context properties in the macro context interface, as well as the implementation, of course, such as ancestors and previous siblings, which allows the new macro to search for and apply using statements above the macro invocation itself. The main job of the macro is to compile your C# code into a macro method and register the macro to be executed later in the same file. To do this, it invokes another macro called compileTime, which in turn uses the Microsoft C# Interactive Engine to compile the code. And that was my week.